More now on the interim deal to limit Iran's nuclear abilities. Several members of Congress from both sides of the aisle saying that the deal is not tough enough. Senator Lindsey Graham is a Republican from South Carolina, of course, and a key member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, joining us now to talk more about this. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
So you have long been skeptical of the negotiations, but you now know the interim deal. Good deal, bad deal?
Well, I've seen a movie like this before called North Korea Did Not End Well. I don't think this, what does this deal accomplish in terms of the end game? The end game is to dismantle the plutonium reactor. The end game should be to stop enrichment. This deal allows 18,000 centrifuges to stay in place, and it basically just suspends construction of the plutonium reactor. We're so far away from what the end game should look like. I'm very worried.
You're very worried, but how is this not a positive first step towards that end game? Many folks are asking, why not? What's the alternative?
Well, we had a chance to deliver a body blow. The sanctions actually worked, but this interim deal gives the Iranians $7 billion in cash, and it leaves in place one of the most sophisticated enrichment programs around. 10 years ago, there were 200 centrifuges. Now there are 18,000. The plutonium reactor is still very much able to be assembled. We did this with North Korea. They promised to not go forward on a reactor that's about to come online this year. When you relieve sanctions in North Korea, the North Koreans took the money and broke out. That's exactly where I worry about here. The centrifuges that are left in place really create a capability to go nuclear. You don't need 20% enriched uranium anymore in Iran to make a weapon. You can do it with 3.5%. So this deal is so far away from the end game. Can I tell you what I think Congress will be doing?
Please tell me.
We're going to come up with a new round of sanctions that really defines the end game. I think there's bipartisan support to dismantle the plutonium reactor and to stop enriching in Iran completely. After 30 years of chaos, mayhem, and murder by the Iranian regime, should they really be allowed to enrich uranium? The 20% uranium that's been diluted, that's a good start. If they want a commercial nuclear program, let the international community provide them fuel rods like we do with Canada and Mexico. There is no right to enrich. So we're so far away from what I think an acceptable end game is that I think you're going to see Congress weigh in more aggressively, not less.
And I want to get into the question of sanctions, but what you're pointing at are is the tough stuff, is the stuff that the administration says will be negotiated and talked about over the next 6 months. We had Samantha Power on, and she said this deal, the beauty of what was being worked on as a deal is the fact that you're going to test the trust, but verify to make sure that they're doing their job. Isn't it unrealistic after so many decades of mistrust to go from 0 to 60 in just one deal?
You went from 0 to 1, and you need to get to 60. And at the end of the day, this was an opportunity lost. The sanctions did work. To Obama administration's credit, they put together an international sanctions regime that really did hit a body blow, land a body blow to the Iranian economy. We had these guys on the rope. What I was looking for is an interim deal that went a long way toward the final deal. This actually leaves in place everything that would allow them to make a weapon. It doesn't dismantle anything. It doesn't really roll back their capability. And if you're Israel, you've got to wake up and look at this deal as a nightmare, because the capability to go nuclear is very much in place, hasn't been reduced much at all. And remember North Korea, there were inspectors everywhere, all the time, and sanctions were in place. And the UN is not going to be a picket fence to keep the Iranians from going nuclear in the eyes of the Israelis. No Israeli government is going to rely on the UN to stop the advancement of the Iranian nuclear program. They want it dismantled. I want it dismantled.
Senator, it does continue to beg the question, though, what is the alternative? Sanctions brought Iran to the table, but Christiane Amanpour just argued that sanctions didn't get Iran over the last decade to surrender and to capitulate. So is the alternative a military strike? Where is there nothing in between?
No, there is something in between. Sanctions that get them to the table, and once they get to the table, to let them know, here's your alternatives. If you want a commercial, peaceful nuclear power program, Lindsey Graham agrees that is an acceptable outcome. Have a commercial nuclear reactor. Just let the international community control the fuel cycle. You're insisting on the right to enrich. Given your behavior, you have abandoned that right. One, there is no right. We're not going to give it to you. Once you get them to the table, you let them know what the final deal would look like and say, take this or else. We're dealing with people who are not only untrustworthy, this is a murderous regime that murders their own people, that's created chaos and mayhem throughout the whole world, the largest sponsor of state terrorism, and we're treating them completely out of sync with who they are. That's what bothers me so much. This deal doesn't represent the fact that we're dealing with some of the most thuggish people in the world.
Senator, just real quick, you talked about, I want to know what Congress is going to do. You support more sanctions. Do you think that's going to happen within the 6-month period? Are you going to support sanctions right now?
Yes, I think you'll have sanctions coming out in the next couple of weeks, actually, that will be bipartisan and tie the sanctions to the end game. My goal is to get new sanctions in place, and the only way they can be relieved is if you dismantle the reactor, not suspend construction, that if you stop enrichment, not just pause it. I think the new round of sanctions will be focused on an end game that will make the world safe and prevent Iran from having a nuclear capability. Right now, the interim deal leaves their capability totally intact. The new round of sanctions will be focused on the end game, and it is coming soon.
Senator Lindsey Graham, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in.